Hey guys, this is the WalterFootball.com After Dark Show for November 1st, 2024. We're going to be doing the Thursday thoughts for the Week 9 NFL picks against the spread. Before we intro our co-host for tonight, please like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. As you can see here in the merch store, we have a bunch of t-shirts here that are 25% off. Actually two t-shirts that I have just made today. They're not available yet, but they're going to be available on Saturday. I think you guys will like this a lot. I am wearing one of them, as you can see on the screen here. And Andy asked me what the over/under was for times I've worn the shirt for days. And that actually is a rare under. The under is a shocking surprise hit because I just put on the shirt to go trick-or-treating because I actually had to leave the house. So, we are just wearing one of these shirts.
Walt, when will the hat be available? I like the hat on you.
I found it in the closet. Actually, I usually wear a Cobra Kai outfit for Halloween on the show, but I can't find it anywhere. I don't know where it is. My wife told me all the Halloween stuff was in the closet, and I looked through the closet and I didn't see it, unfortunately. So I hope no one threw it out because there's a sweet Cobra Kai gi and headband. It was I always loved that costume. So I found this hat instead. I think I wore this hat when I dressed up as Carl from The Walking Dead.
Almost makes me think of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, it does look like that too. Yeah, I wore this costume as Carl from The Walking Dead back when the show was a good show. Not the later episodes when there were stormtroopers for some reason. Also please consider super chats, super stickers. That's the best way to support the show. I say it all the time. We make very little from YouTube ads. Like all our revenue comes mostly from you guys, Slew, John Sanders. A bunch of you guys in the past have contributed. Germ, Andrew Z, Can't Make an Eagle, Degeneron, Kevin Kovac, Cassandra. You guys have been so great. So any further contributions would really be appreciated. I can't say that enough. Also, you can go to Amazon, buy my books. Jerks of the College Years is here. The AI asking, does it contain any offensive content? Depends, I guess, but it's always okay. You can also get how the 2020 MVP was stolen. So I don't know. Does this reveal any insight about Rodgers? I don't know why they're asking that. Yeah, it does. I promise you it does. So you can find these books on Amazon. We are joined tonight by Andy Iskoe from thelogicalapproach.com. Andy, how are you? And how was your week 8?
Week 8 was very good, especially in the NFL, which I'm happy about. Colleges so, but this is the week that I actually like the colleges more than I like the pros. But that's not unusual. I usually start out not liking the NFL schedule when I first see it, and then I break it down a little bit, and by the end of the week, I fall in love with it and hopefully make the right decisions, which is always key because, as I've always tell people, you can always make a case for both sides in the game. And then it's just a question of how your experience and how you weight the factors that allows you to make a selection. It's because the point spread is supposedly the great equalizer. So, it's easy to say, yeah, the team favored by 10 is going to win, but are they going to cover? And so there are always reasons. And in fact, I say, if you cannot find reasons to have a wager on one team, pass the game because subconsciously you're being biased. There can always be a reason. It may not be a great reason. Sometimes it's a reason against the team that you really like. But the success becomes A, being objective, and B, not being stubborn.
Yeah, and on the logicalapproach.com, you have a newsletter as well. And I saw today you had, 5 college football picks? And you're
4 and 4, yeah. I write up 4 and 4, and I give opinions on all the other games. They're either what I call opinions and leans, I guess. Best of the rest and the rest.
Yeah, your top college play is one that I have as well. So I urge you guys to check out Andy's site, sign up for the newsletter.
I have to remind myself what it is.
Okay, yeah.
I have it. Yeah. Okay, yeah. A lot of good reasons I put in there.
Yeah, I was happy to see that. So
and I like the opponent, just not in the spot.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, definitely sign up for the newsletter. You get Andy's college plays and NFL plays, and a lot of interesting insights as well. I urge you guys to check it out. So let's get to the games. So we start off on the Sunday slate. And by the way, I hope you guys followed. We had the same game parlay for the Jets Texans we hit tonight. So congrats to those who followed. But The Sunday slate begins with Patriots and Titans. This line is either 3 minus 120, 125, or 3.5, depending on where you look. So a couple notes I have for this game. No Tony Pollard in either practice this week. No L'Jarius Sneed. No Tavondre Sweat. No Amani Hooker. So I like the Titans earlier in the week. Just because the Patriots are coming off the Super Bowl win. The Titans were embarrassed, and I think the Titans are a little bit better than the Patriots. I also think they match up well against the Patriots because the Patriots can't stop the run. The Titans should be able to run if they have Pollard. Conversely, the Titans have a good defense. They can stop the run, which means the Patriots can't really do much offensively. So everything pointed to the Titans, but if the Titans don't have all these players, it's gonna be tough to back them, especially if the line's 3.5. So I'm still leaning Tennessee, but I'm not sure if I can get there on a bet if all these guys are out. So where do you stand on this game?
Yeah, I was leaning Tennessee early in the week, but I sort of swung around to New England and a couple of factors you mentioned. But one that also came to attention that I start to follow at this point in the season to see what it's worth. They were off of Detroit's been a very physical team this year on both sides of the football. And last week, of course, it was 52-14. Detroit managed only 225 yards because of the defensive and kick return issues and all that Detroit was able to capitalize on. So they didn't have the ball very much, and yet they still won rather handily. But where I'm headed here is teams after playing Detroit this year, and I was very surprised to read this. The Lions are the only team that after which they are faced teams after playing Detroit 0-6 straight up. 0-6 against the spread indicates to me that, yeah, it could be random, but 6 for 6 is pretty nice. And it tells me that they just wear teams down physically. And that makes sense because Detroit is so aggressive on both sides of the football. They have a good running attack. And they have a solid enough defense even without Hutchinson. So I'm a little bit reluctant to play Tennessee, especially if that line stays 3.5. I have seen 3s out there now. I don't know that I will play New England because you're asking a bad team to win a second straight game, especially going on the road. But Tennessee has not been very good this year. They've pretty much packed it in on the season. They might very well make additional trades as we get closer to next Tuesday's. In fact, it's the NFL's election day. Elect who you're going to trade for and who you're going to trade away. I was saying the same thing, actually. Had the Jets lost tonight, they might have also traded away. I mean, yeah, they've only got 3 wins, but, they're 3-6. And we'll talk about it a little bit later. But remember last year, the Rams were 3-6. They ran the last 7 out of 8 to make the playoffs as a wild card. I'm not saying that the Jets are going to do that, but with Aaron Rodgers, he didn't play terribly last week. It was the defense that couldn't hold the lead late in the game after Rodgers got the touchdown. And he played well tonight. And there's still a lot of capability because remember, they're still getting familiar with all the playing moves that they've made throughout the offseason and early in the season, etc. So getting back to Tennessee, I could see at 2-6 this team because of, remember, they traded away the receiver. They lost Henry during the offseason. Quarterback is, maybe Mason Rudolph is the answer. I think Levis is still uncertain for this week, but it's a team that I don't expect to be doing much over the second half of the season. So for me, it's either New England or pass, and probably look under the total as well.
Do you think it's possible that because last week's game was such a blowout, and mostly it came on special teams, that maybe Tennessee avoided the physicality that you talked about with Detroit? And that they may not be as fatigued. Like I actually thought about that as well, and I wonder if like this is going to be an exception of sorts.
It could be, but how much of a toll did it take on the offense being on the field as long as they were, because Detroit scored on those plays so quickly. So normally you think about it wearing down the defense, but the offensive line's getting battered as well. If you're running, what was it, like 71 plays to? I think I have it from last week because it was some wide number that it was. Let me just get back over here. Tennessee ran 71 offensive plays to 47 for Detroit. So that's a lot of battling that they took from a physical defense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I'm going to be off this game, even though it says 3 units on the site. With these injuries, it's just too much of a concern. But we'll see what the final injury report looks like on Friday night. So let's get to the next game.
By the way, Tennessee also 1-6 against the spread, and now you're asking them to win and cover as a favorite. Now, the Jets did that tonight, but they also failed as favorites straight up in their last 2 games when they were favored.
Yeah, I would say though they beat a similar team in Miami back what was it, week 3 or 4 on Monday Night Football.
Yeah,
and that Miami.
But that was without a quarterback. Without Miami's quarterback.
Right, but New England doesn't have a quarterback either.
Yeah.
Drake May is probably going to be out with the concussion, so it's going to be Jacoby Brissett. I like Brissett.
Well, Brissett at least had a little bit more experience than the Miami quarterbacks. I think the 2 quarterbacks who played that game against Tennessee.
Yeah, no, Huntley was a mess because it was his first game. It was week 4. So, yeah, I mean, I can see. I don't know. I still think Tennessee is a better team, but with all these injuries, I just can't back them. So, a game I like more, Chargers at the Browns. So I already like this game. The Browns also like the Patriots are coming off the Super Bowl win, victory over the Ravens. They don't really have much going on.
What you call the Patriots win over the Jets a Super Bowl win?
For them, I think so. Yeah.
It was a revenge win from the earlier game this year, where they were embarrassed on Thursday Night Football. But I guess I would say an emotionally gratifying win.
Okay, maybe. I don't know. I thought that they put everything they had into that game. I thought they had more energy than the Jets, certainly. Looking ahead to that Thursday night game, but I mean, either way, I think Cleveland certainly had their Super Bowl.
Yes, absolutely. Especially because after they finally got the lead, they had to hold on to the final play of the game as they let Baltimore just run down the field in the final minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Or pass down the field, actually.
Yeah, and whenever you have a bad team having success, it's tough for them to sustain that success. And I think
that depends. That depends if you really think Cleveland is a bad team or just a team that played poorly, largely because of the quarterback.
It's true, but they are missing some key players. So 2 of the 3 best defensive players, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah got taken off on the stretcher. Denzel Ward suffered his 6th concussion of his career. They were both DNP in practice Wednesday and Thursday, so they may not have them. Joel Bitonio, a talented guard that they have, is DNP in practice twice. David Njoku was downgraded today to DNP. So this Browns team is already not that good. Their defense is not ranked highly. They're like 22nd or something in the NFL according to EPA. Just because they're not getting pressure without Garrett. Outside of Garrett, they're not getting pressure, and they have some other issues. And not having those guys is certainly going to hurt. Bitonio being out is going to hurt the offensive line. They don't have much of a passing game. Obviously, Winston's an upgrade over Watson, but I still don't think they have much of a passing game. And Chubb is not healthy. So there's a lot wrong with this team, and I don't think they're going to sustain success here. The Chargers are the better team. I think a much better team than the Browns. And, some people might be turned off with the Chargers playing an early game on the East Coast. I think this might be beneficial for them because Jim Harbaugh in his career, 7-1 against the spread in early 1 o'clock games on the East Coast. The only loss he had straight up and against the spread was week 3 of this year against the Steelers when Justin Herbert got injured. So that's the only ATS loss in these situations. So I think the Chargers will be focused. I think they're the better team, and I think the Browns will be a little aloof after that win. So I like the Chargers quite a bit. Although Evan disagreed. He liked the Browns. So I'm curious to hear where you are in this game.
I can understand the enthusiasm for the Browns after their performance last week. I think that the Watson issue was the divisive in the locker room. I think the players, either privately or maybe externally, were advocating for Winston. And of course, the Watson injury put an end to that issue. And Cleveland did play, arguably its best offensive game of the year last week. And with Winston in there, you have to take the statistics that Cleveland had prior to that with a little bit of a grain of salt, because Winston will be an improvement, certainly in the passing game, because even after last week, Cleveland is near the bottom of the league. They average just 9.1 yards per pass completion. I think they are actually tied with with Tennessee in the lowest amount of yards gained when they complete passes. Another thing that I do like about the matchup here is the quarterback issue. And again, you do have to take into consideration that it's no longer Watson, but the Cleveland quarterback situation, averaging 4.6 sacks to the quarterback per game. Now, a lot of that was Watson, of course. Chargers, even though Herbert hadn't been asked to pass a lot, he's picked it up a little bit in the last few games, only 2.5 sacks per game. So that's a significant difference. Often it could be the difference between two offensive first downs that are not made because of the sacks taking you out of better field position. But getting more to the basics as far as I like the under in this game as well. The Chargers lead the league, allowing just 13 points per game, and they're only averaging 18.9. So their total points for the season, and we're now, 6-7 games, 8 games in for Cleveland, 7 for the Chargers. So 7 games. Their games are averaging only 31.9 total points per game, and Cleveland only slightly better. So they're scoring 17.2, which is 27th. And they're allowing 23.2, which is 40.4. So that's still almost a field goal, maybe now a little bit less than that under the total, and that's just based on them. And when you think about it, neither of these teams have great passing attacks. Chargers averaging just under 200 yards per game. That's 24th. And Cleveland 29th at 180. The running games aren't that great either. The defense against the run is about average, so you're not looking for a lot of yards through the air. And both teams, even though they're weak passing the football, both of them rank in the top dozen as far as defending the pass. So I could see this being a physical, drag-it-out type game. I wouldn't expect too many big plays. Both teams, the Chargers especially are one of the best teams. In fact, I think they rank third as far as turnovers lost, less than turnover per game. I think they've only lost 4 turnovers in their 7 games. Cleveland, a little bit better. It's about 1 turnover per game. The thing is that especially Cleveland, their defense, which has been a strength, they've only had in 8 games this year, they've only forced 5 turnovers. And because Harbaugh likes to run the ball, and they're averaging 117 yards on the ground, which is not very good, better than Cleveland, I think it sets up nicely for a low-scoring game with the Chargers, I think, just having too many of the significant edges, and you're only asking them to basically what's the line now? 1.5 maybe. So you're basically asking them to win by less than a field goal. And yes, you are getting them against the Cleveland team that's off a very emotional and obviously necessary win for them.
Yeah, I like the spot. I think you might be right about it being a drag-it-out game. It's kind of what Jim Harbaugh loves to do. So if the Chargers can pace this game, then I feel like it could go that way.
Winston is the unknown quantity because he's taken a lot of heat over the years. But remember, he had all that trouble in Tampa Bay. He goes to New Orleans, and he was a pretty decent quarterback when he got there. So often it's a matter of the system. Often it's also a matter of the coaching and being able to identify what the flaws are. And some coordinators and the coaches are able to, and some aren't.
Yeah. I will say, though, that if Njoku's out, his number 1 receiver is going to be Cedric Tillman, which, he looked good in the past 2 weeks, but it's going to be hard to count on that. Slew saying the Titans-Patriots game is going to be a classic Jacob Kamaker Go Girl game. That's it's a good callback. Nice one, Slew. And Tom says it feels like a 16-10 game, which would certainly help you go under there.
By the way, in total defense, as far as that's concerned, Chargers number 8 in the league and Cleveland number 14. So both above the league average, which tends to lead to a lot. Let me just see what the numbers are. In fact, Chargers 1-6, 1 over 6 unders. Cleveland also 3-5 with 5 unders. So both of them are playing under the total. And as I mentioned, what those total average points are, there's a nice little leeway. If they can get to their averages, they're still going to be slightly under.
Yeah. All right, next game is Saints at Panthers. I still don't know what to do with this game, although I could probably guess what you're going to say unless you feel strongly about either side, which is pass, because as you always say, the advantage of the better is that they don't have to play every game, and I will not be playing this game unless it's maybe teasing the Saints down to 1.5 if Derek Carr plays, but I think that's where I would go, I think. Outside of that, I don't know if I can bet the spread at this moment. Derek Carr limited in practice both days, so I assume he's going to play, but we don't know if he's going to be 100%. That's the issue here. Is one of the issues here. The other issue is that we don't know who's starting for the Panthers. Andy Dalton practiced fully twice. So he may be the starter, but they may stick with Bryce Young. We just don't know that yet. And I don't really want to back Bryce Young. If this is Andy Dalton plus 7.5, might look appealing until you remember how bad Carolina's defense is. It's historically bad. As for injuries, the Saints might be without their top 2 cornerbacks, Marshawn Lattimore, Kool-Aid McKinstry, or 2 of their top 3 cornerbacks. Marshawn Lattimore's DMP twice. Kool-Aid McKinstry was DMP on Thursday, so he had a downgrade. For the Panthers, Ike Ekwonu, one of their tackles, he was DMP twice as well. So like I said, I don't really have a good feel for this game outside of maybe teasing the Saints down, but even that's not too exciting. So what do you think about this game?
Well, the Saints have had all the injuries. Remember, they had that 37-point win over Carolina to open the season, followed by the 25-point win at Dallas. And then we had the injuries the next week. They lost at home to Philly by 3. The following week, they lost at Atlanta by 2. And then they started to lose by larger margins. But consider the teams that they were playing. They played a couple of playoff teams from a year ago. They played Kansas City, lost by 13. Lost that one-sided game where everybody was out, 51-27 at home to Tampa. And then they played a much-improved Denver game that they lost by a big margin. And last week they were a bit more competitive, but they still weren't fully healthy in losing to a very good defensive team at the Chargers. So I can see New Orleans. I can explain their losses because of the personnel that they were lacking, certainly on offense. But again, almost like in liking Denver last week, laying a big number, albeit at home rather than on the road. But here you're only asked to be laying, 7 against Carolina as opposed to 10 at home. Well, I'll repeat from last week. Carolina 1-7. The one win was that win at the Raiders, and it was a letdown spot again for the Raiders. They had just come back to beating Baltimore. But look at the margins. Lost by 37 to the Saints in the first meeting, lost by 23, lost by 10, lost by 26, lost by 18, lost by 33, and lost by 14 last week, where they scored a touchdown to make it 28-14 in the final, I think, minute of the game. So I still see no reason to back Carolina. I think New Orleans has the talent and certainly the belief that they can make a run at the playoffs, despite the fact that they've lost 6 in a row. I'll get it a little bit later in the show. But there was a team last year that was a talented team, 3-6, had injuries, won 7 of 8, and made the playoffs.
Yeah. So Richard's saying that they said the Panthers are going to start Bryce Young. I didn't see that news, but I just looked. I didn't see it, but yeah, it could be the case. Maybe I just missed it, but.
Unless he plays defense, I'm not sure it makes a difference.
Yeah, I think if you were to tell me Derek Carr would be 100%, I would be totally on board with betting the Saints. I just say backing injured quarterbacks. That's my issue right now. But I still think the Saints should be able to win this game. So we'll see. All right, next game is Dolphins at the Bills. Bills are favored by 6. As far as updates here, the only thing I have is that Zach Seiler was DMP in practice twice, which is a big deal because most people don't know him, but he's been pretty good for the Dolphins this year. The Dolphins already missing Bradley Chubb and their other pass rusher, Jalen Phillips. So they could be without 3 other top pass rushers against Buffalo, which is just going to be disastrous. So Evan talked to me in the Buffalo on Tuesday. I liked them a little bit. He made a great case for them. So I like them more now. I increased my projected wager on Buffalo. It's basically like Buffalo has dominated this matchup. Tua had like a deer in the headlights look against the Bills the last time he played them, and that was before his concussion. He just looked so frazzled. And this Miami team just doesn't beat winning teams. Now I know 6 could invite a backdoor cover. It's my only concern, but this game could get out of hand potentially. So I like Buffalo here. Who do you like this game?
Well, it's interesting because I'll go back to last week. Seattle was coming off a 20-point road win at Atlanta. And a lot of people liked them last week, getting 3 at home against the Bills. And then they lost as badly to the Bills as they had beaten Atlanta the week before. So now Buffalo, of course, is a team that everyone likes, and there's a lot of good reasons to like them. Who did Miami play last week?
Cardinals.
Right. And again, I don't think this means as much as the last time I cited this stat with Detroit. But after playing Arizona this year, teams are 7-0 straight up, 6-1 against the point spread. Now, whereas I can find a reason why teams would struggle after Detroit, I'm not so sure I can find a reason why teams would have so much success after playing Arizona, unless they are not physically banged up after playing the Arizona permissive defense. But that's not enough to necessarily overcome the the deficiencies that Arizona that Miami has shown. The stats certainly support Buffalo. The series history supports Buffalo. One stat in specific, and I talk about it every week, and I think the yards per pass attempt is meaningless because it includes incompletions. I like to look at what happens when passes are completed. There is a little bit over a 2 yard per completion difference. Miami gaining 10.0, Buffalo gaining 12.2 yards per completion. That's significant. And defensively, it's also over 2 yards. Buffalo allows 9.8 yards per completion, which is outstanding, and Miami allows 11.1, which is not very good, maybe a little bit above the league average. So basically, we're saying in the passing game, Miami has not been efficient offensively. Buffalo has been very efficient defensively, and the reverse is somewhat true as far as Buffalo being very efficient and Miami inefficient. It is a spot where I could see Miami, because they were embarrassed in that first meeting. Not sure if I will play the game, but I could certainly make a case for taking the points with Miami, because everyone's going to be looking to back Buffalo for a lot of reasons that you mentioned, for some of the reasons that I mentioned, and it's never that easy in the NFL.
John asking, can you throw every Dolphins game out with Tua, without Tua out?
I think you can throw the offensive performance out.
Yeah.
Not so sure about the defense.
Right, and
although you could say, when you're out without your starting quarterback and there's as huge a drop off as there is from Tua to whoever you want to consider the backup, whether it was Skylar Thompson or Hundley or whomever it would be, that the defense is under more pressure because they know that they're not going to get that much support from the offense as if Tua was in or a capable backup was playing instead.
Yeah, I'll say though, with Tua this year, they barely beat the Jaguars at home with that great home field advantage they have in September. They got blown out by the Bills and they lost to the Cardinals. So they haven't done anything this year to warrant
Tua,
even with Tua, exactly.
Yeah.
So
although that game against Jacksonville, they did come back to win, but they they scored 20 points to win. What was it, 2017? I think not exactly an offensive explosion that you might have expected against Jacksonville.
Oh yeah, and at the time we thought, okay, maybe Jaguars are going to be a playoff team. This is an impressive win, maybe, but we've seen how bad the Jaguars are since then. So that doesn't look nearly as good. Next game is Cowboys at the Falcons. There's a couple of injury notes here. So Micah Parsons said last week that he was going to play against San Francisco. Now he was out; he didn't play. So I assume that maybe he's close. Maybe he's going to play this week, but he's been DNP twice. So it sounds like he's.
Yeah, I saw something tonight on NFL Network that I think said that he likely won't play this week.
Okay, yeah, I didn't.
I don't know that he's been ruled out, but I did. Let me see what I can see on the other report that I have. But I did see that they don't expect him to play this week.
Yeah, so I would be surprised if he played. The other thing here is that Dallas is going to have cluster injuries. A cornerback, Trevon Diggs, or in all likelihood, Trevon Diggs, DNP twice, Deron Bland, DNP twice. So they're kind of counting on Bland returning, kind of like Parsons, and these guys can't practice. So I assume they're going to be out, barring a reversal on Friday. So you have Dallas not getting to the quarterback, and you have the two top cornerbacks out once again for Dallas. So this looks like a strong Atlanta side, but the line moved to 3, and then I don't know. Like Atlanta just had a big win against Tampa to take control of the division. Like really, all these non-divisional games don't mean much to Atlanta because they're not going to get the number 1 seed. If they win the division, they still get a home playoff game. So it's like, do these games really matter to them? I don't know. I don't really want to back Atlanta here as a favorite. They tend to kick a lot of field goals. Like a lot of the results are like 19-17, 18-16. They win by 2, and then when you have -3, you feel so salty. I don't want to back either team. I'm going to pass on this one. I was considering Dallas plus 8.5 if Parsons is going to play on the teaser. But now that it looks like he's not going to play and the two quarterbacks might be out, I'm just going to pass on this game entirely. So do you have a strong feeling for this game?
Well, once again, I'll take a look at some of the numbers aside from the situation. I mean, Dallas, they were in a situation last week coming off the bye that favored them, and although they were competitive for a while, they still ended up losing to San Francisco, a team that itself had not been playing all that well. I'm still concerned about this Dallas defense. Here we are halfway into the season, or basically 7 games for Dallas, 3-4, 26th in the league, allowing 373 yards per game, 28.3 points allowed. That's 31st in the league, 30th in the league, losing 13 turnovers so far. They've only recovered forced 5 turnovers, which is 26th in the league. They're last in the league in running the football, 74 yards per game. That's 32, and there are some really bad rushing teams, and they are the worst of them. They are 31st, allowing 155 yards per game. This team is a mess. Prescott and the Cowboys, they are being sacked 2.5 times per game. And Atlanta, not much better, but still under 2 times per game. I mentioned the running game of over a yard difference. Atlanta gaining 4.7 per attempt, which is nice. Dallas 3.4, which is very bad. And I'll point to the passing defense. Dallas allowing 12.5 yards per game, Atlanta barely 9 yards per game. The fundamentals certainly support the Atlanta Falcons. And, I don't know that these teams say, well, we're not playing a division opponent, so it doesn't count. They are not that far ahead in the division that they cannot afford to lose a home game, and B, a game in which they are expected to win, and C, playing an opponent that is not playing very well. They're certainly not playing up to expectation, and they may again have their best defensive player out. Tampa Bay is 4-4, Atlanta 5-3. Don't expect Tampa to beat Kansas City, but it's not impossible, and that could end up being in a tie for the division. And again, New Orleans getting healthy. So I don't think Atlanta can take this game for granted. At 3 or less, I will likely have some sort of play on the Falcons. And let me put it this way. I'm so down on Dallas, given the way they've played, given the talent they have. I'm not even considering Dallas for a teaser.
Yeah, I'm not either. If Parsons were to play, I
that'd be a little different, but even right. that might make me consider Dallas on a teaser, but it still wouldn't consider playing the Cowboys on the spread.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on being down on Dallas. I think Dallas sucks. I think they're one of the 5 worst teams. I think they're one of the 10 worst teams in the NFL. I think they're in the bottom 6 to bottom 10 range.
But, as an aside, last night the World Series, okay, and Aaron Boone has made so many mistakes that I called Aaron Boone the Mike McCarthy of Major League Baseball. Especially if he holds on to his job. I mean, Mike McCarthy is criticized for a lot of things. And, again, a lot of it may also be some of the assistant coaches, the coordinator. They've got to figure out what is ailing Prescott. Yeah, the offensive line has some issues. The lack of a running game, which is also related to the offensive line issues. But, we've had almost half a season for those issues to be worked out that have really started from the beginning of the season with that. The first game they go up and they win at Cleveland. And then they go down and get blown out by New Orleans. They got blown out by Detroit. I mean, there's just something wrong. I mean, yeah, maybe Dallas is a 3-4 team, but certainly the talent suggests better. But it should not be a 3-4 team that gets blown out the way they have.
Well, I can tell you right now, it's Brian Schottenheimer, the offensive coordinator. I think he's one of the worst offensive coordinators we've had in a long time. It's a classic example of nepotism where, Marty Schottenheimer, excellent coach. He's had his mishaps here and there.
Oh, maybe. How about the Shanahans? Maybe the same thing.
Yeah, although
Mike and Kyle.
Yeah, but Kyle at least has proven himself as a good play caller. He's
one of those people, I think, who, and we've seen it with guys like Wade Phillips. We've seen it with Norv Turner. They excel as offensive or defensive coordinators, but they're just not that good when it comes to running the entire operation.
Yeah,
not as good as
expected. He's gone to the Super Bowl twice at least. And also, the difference between him and Brian Schottenheimer, he was at least a great offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Whereas, except for getting to run the ball, but Brian Schottenheimer has never been a good offensive coordinator. Like he's never done well in the NFL. He just keeps getting jobs over and over again. It's unbelievable. His play calling is so predictable. He never develops any quarterbacks. I think I wrote. I remember back in I think it was like 2008 or 2009. I wrote this whole thing on my site about why Schottenheimer should be fired by the Jets, and this was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And yet he's still an offensive coordinator somehow. I don't understand how he keeps getting jobs. So yeah, it's just awful situation for Dallas. It's not surprising that they are one of the worst teams in the NFL, but I don't like Atlanta either. I think Atlanta is overrated. Their offense obviously is great, but their defense is 28th in EPA, so they can't stop anyone, especially slot receivers. And you have CD Lamb in the slot here, so he could have a huge game. So I for at least fantasy wise, and
if Prescott can get him the ball.
I imagine CD Lamb is gonna be our player prop bet for this game, and especially if you're right, Dallas is gonna be trailing. That means they're gonna throw a lot. So,
the one edge that Dallas does have, and it does relate to defense, is they're averaging defensively over 2 sacks per game. Atlanta under 1 sack per game. So if Dallas can give Prescott enough time, maybe he can do some damage. I just like the way that Kirk Cousins has energized this Atlanta team that offensively last year was underperforming to a great extent, and now suddenly they are performing much better. Their overall defense isn't terrible. It's actually like number 19, which is better than Dallas, both in terms of yards allowed and points allowed. Again, they're better at defending the run. They're better at defending the pass. Doesn't make them a great defense, but a defense that's playing better than a defense that was expected to be much better than they've played. Now, maybe Parsons, if he plays, does make a difference in this game.
Yeah, well, we'll see if he's 100%.
If he's healthy.
Right, exactly. Sue says Falcons defense is garbage. Oops, did I say that? It's a precursor to the shirt that I have, the new shirt that I have. So it'll probably be up on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to it. I think you guys will like it a lot. So actually, I have 2 variations of it. I couldn't decide on the catchphrase of the shirt. So you guys can tell me what you like better. So anyway,
you know what? I'll tell you what the shirt should say.
Okay.
You should take a fly, Eagles fly, cross out Eagles, and write in Falcons. It sounds better. Fly, Falcons, fly.
I don't think people in Philly would be too happy about that. Like at some just trash thrown at me or something.
Well, yeah. Well, see, here's the shirt for Philadelphia. Push, tush, touchdown.
Right. Yeah, you could definitely do that. This would be pretty catchy, I think. I did want to make a hindsight is 50-50 t-shirt that the Cam Newton famous quote that he had. All right. Anyway, let's go to Broncos at Ravens. I don't know what this news is. So Lamar Jackson missed practice on Wednesday, and the coach.
I think he missed it today also.
Right. So John Harbaugh yesterday said that it was just a maintenance day. It's like, okay. But he missed practice today too. So this line dropped to 8, in 7.5 in some places. I'm going to look into this a little bit more. And if I don't see anything positive, like if they didn't say again, like, hey, he's just taking a rest here, I'm going to lock this in after the show. So guys, I'm going to tweet this out after we're done recording here, because if he's out again in practice on Friday, this line is going to plummet. If it's going to be who is Baltimore's backup anyway? It's let's see here. We can look it up in a second. It's not Tyler Huntley anymore because he's with Miami. It is Josh Johnson, who's how old is he? He's like 39 at this point. So he's a smart guy, but he doesn't have much of talent. He's won some games as a backup before.
He is 38.
38, okay.
And does not have a very distinguished career. He does have 100% completion percentage this year. He's 1 for 1, which is twice as good as last year. 1 for 2 years ago. Didn't even get to see action last year. It was 1 for 2 years ago. He's never been. He had 1 year back, I think, with Tampa Bay about a decade or so ago, where he played in 11 games but didn't start any, and again didn't have a lot of activity. So I think he's on the roster simply because they couldn't find anyone else.
Yeah, they lost Huntley, so they had to find a replacement. He wasn't very good in the preseason, so I'll say that.
And Huntley was actually capable with the Ravens when he.
Yeah, I was shocked that they
played
let him go.
with better talent around him.
Exactly. Yeah, I was shocked that they let him go. So yeah, I mean that sort of quarterback against Denver's defense is going to be asking for trouble. I like Denver anyway. Baltimore has a game coming up on Thursday. We've seen teams heading into Thursday games really struggle. The Niners lost to the Cardinals, Seahawks lost to the Giants. Last week, the Jets lost to the Patriots. The Texans almost lost to the Colts. So, I do like Denver here. Who do you like in this game?
I'm also leaning towards Denver. I do have some concerns from some of the statistics. I mean, obviously the Broncos are playing very well. They won 4 out of 5, I think it was. The loss was the Charger loss a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. So it's either 4 out of 5. They're at 5-3 right now. As by the way is Baltimore, which is a disappointment, I guess, for Baltimore. They were expected to be a lot better, and again, it's been the defense of Baltimore this year. We're normally thinking of Baltimore being one of the best teams in the league overall. They were actually ranked 25th in total defense this year, which is a shock. But not only that, it's an unbalanced defense because they are number 1 against the run. And by the way, they're also number 1 in running the football. 200 yards per game is what they're averaging. They're number 1 against the run and number 32 against the pass. Now, maybe it's because teams don't pass as much against them because they just concede. I mean, they don't run much against them because they concede they're going to be stopped. Or then again, maybe it's also because the defense is vulnerable. And we've seen that several times as they've blown late leads, as they did to the Raiders, as they almost did to Dallas, up 28-7, held on to win 28-25, as they did last week against Cleveland after taking a late lead. So there are some issues with Baltimore, and I like the way that Denver is playing. And they do have they're number 3 in the league in total defense, number 3 in the league in points allowed, just 15 per game. Now, one of the things about Denver that's a contrast, again, I'll look at the yards, passing yards. Denver only averages 9.4 yards per completion, almost a full 4 yards less than what Baltimore gains. Okay, so defensively, Denver's, I think, the best in the league, 9.0 yards allowed, but Baltimore, 12.0 yards allowed, and I think they are one of maybe 3 teams that are allowing 12 or more yards per completion. So Bo Nix, who is showing some improvement, feeling more comfortable, will be able to attack the Baltimore defense, especially the secondary. The concern I have is the running game. Denver's not terrible at running the ball, 4.5 yards per game, but Baltimore, very effective at 6.2 yards. Denver's about average, allowing 4 yards per game. So I could see Denver. I could see Denver trying to run, but you just can't run against Baltimore, and so they may be forced to pass. So if Baltimore decides, you know what, we'll maybe make it look like they can get some running plays off against us because we're going to concentrate more on stopping the pass. Maybe Baltimore has some success. Again, a lot of it depends upon Lamar Jackson. I expect him to play, and if so. And once it's determined that he plays, maybe this line does go back up to 10. For me right now, it's Denver or pass. I don't want to go against a team that's playing as well as Denver is, especially with a quarterback that is just developing and a coach in Sean Payton who has been very successful with quarterbacks, and he's learning more and more about Bo Nix. And let's go back to the draft and pre to the draft. Payton was very high on Bo Nix when a lot of other people were saying it's a wasted pick.
Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same side here. I think Denver is in a really good spot. So we have the other team that could be looking ahead to the Thursday game between the Ravens and the Bengals. You have the Bengals favored by 7 over the Raiders. I would be surprised if T. Higgins plays. He was DNP in practice twice, and given that they have to play in 4 days, I think they may rest him. Even if he's like borderline to play, they may set him out. For the Raiders, Robert Spillane and Andre James didn't practice, so that's kind of a bummer. But I still like the Raiders here, even though they have been kind of a crappy team this year. But past 2 weeks they've fought hard. They haven't played well, but they fought hard. They got a backdoor cover against the Chiefs. They got a backdoor field goal against the Rams. And they got Jacoby Myers back last week, which actually gave them a threat downfield, which they haven't had ever since Myers got hurt and Adams started sitting out because he knew he was going to get traded. So now that the Raiders have a downfield threat, I think that they can move the ball in Cincinnati, which has a terrible defense. The Bengals can't do anything defensively. They have the 11th worst pressure rate in the NFL. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. And then offensively, they can't block and they can't run the ball. And it's just Burrow to Higgins, Burrow to Chase, but there's no Higgins now. So this is like a one-trick pony that is favored by a touchdown, and I think that's kind of absurd, especially given that they have like a very obvious look-ahead spot. And you could say, oh, they need a win. They're 3-5, but last week the Jets needed a win at 2-5, and they looked past the Patriots. So I like the Raiders here. I think they could even pull the upset. I think it's gonna be like a 23-20 game or something. So who do you like here?
Yeah, I like Cincinnati here. I mean, the difference, Cincinnati and the Jets. Cincinnati, I think because of their offense, even without T. Higgins, is a greater strength for Cincinnati than the defense has been for the Jets. And in fact, it was the defense that let them down at the end of last week's game. But I just can't find much that I like about the Raiders. I mean, it's a very dysfunctional team, even with the Devontae Adams situation over. They are 28th in the league in offense. They're 11th in defense, which is nice, but they are 30. Neither team really runs the ball very well, and neither team defends the run very well. You mentioned about the Raiders or the poor defense on Cincinnati, but passing the football, it's not a terrible difference between the two. But more importantly, the concern I have with the Raiders, they've turned the ball over in their 8 games 17 times. That's 2.1 per game. That's 31st in the league. Cincinnati, 8 turnovers. That's 1 per game. That's 7th in the league on an average per game. Neither team has been great in forcing turnovers. In fact, Cincinnati's turnover margin is 0 because they've only forced 8 turnovers, the same that they've lost. But the Vegas team, half a turnover forced per game, only 4. So if you take into account that maybe if things go the way they've played and Vegas turns the ball over twice or 2 or 3 times, and Cincinnati maybe 0 or 1, that could be it lead to extra points for the Bengals, who are playing with some need, even though they have the short week ahead, because they cannot afford a loss against the team that they should be. 4-5, they're still very much. In fact, I think we may have talked about it last week. Who will make which team right now has a better chance of making the playoffs? Cincinnati, Cleveland, or the LA Rams in the NFC? Rams, I think, are 3-4. Cincinnati 3-5. Cleveland 2-6 right now, but with a positive quarterback change. So I know it's a big number to be laying, and I know that the Raiders have covered 2 in a row, but they were going up against the Kansas City, both a Rams offense that was without their best receivers, and a Kansas City offense that has not been explosive for the better part of the last full season, going back to the middle of last season. Burrow has a huge edge, I think, over Minshew at quarterback, and that might be the key to the game, even without T. Higgins.
I'll say this about the Raiders, turning the ball over. They've faced some very tough defenses. Like even in the past 4 weeks, they played against the Chiefs, who are number 1 in defensive EPA. Before that, they played against the Rams, who are actually 5th in defensive EPA. Before that, they played the Steelers, and we know how good the Steelers are. And then they played the Broncos before that, who are 8th in defensive EPA. So they played a very tough defensive schedule. This is a huge drop-off in competition defensively.
But sometimes turnovers are the cause of are due to a lack of concentration or something other than I call it like technique. Maybe you're not carrying the ball well. Maybe you're making poor decisions at quarterback and throwing it to coverage that you shouldn't be throwing into.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think that this is a huge step down in competition, and Cincinnati's not going to be able to pressure Minshew as well as those other teams. So I think this game could go different.
That indeed, is certainly a factor to consider. It's just that, look, Cincinnati has played some decent teams this year. Maybe not necessarily. They played Kansas City, and they nearly beat Kansas City on the road.
Yeah.
Now they were healthy at the time, with Higgins, but still, that's still nice to go in. In fact, they gave up a late field goal to lose the game. What was it 26-25? I think it was.
Yeah, if Burrow doesn't fumble, they probably win the game.
Yeah.
Conversely, they played some bad games recently. Last week they got blown out by the Eagles. The week before that,
second half they did. Yeah.
Yeah, the week before that, it was
The
only
Giants. Yeah.
it was 21-14 against the Browns, where
Right.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson played half the game. And before that, it was the 10-7 game against the Giants before that late touchdown.
Yeah.
It was a very unconvincing win. So this team hasn't played well since that Baltimore overtime game.
Yeah.
So it just feels like they kind of rise up to the competition, whereas when they play bad teams, they generally don't do that well, at least this year. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, yeah, it's a good argument for this game.
Yeah, yeah. Don't know that I will play the Bengals, but I can't. I just have too many concerns about the Raiders. And the Raiders again, they've not been able to pass the ball very well. They're another team that's averaging under 10 yards per completion. Now maybe they'll get healthy against a Cincinnati pass defense like they did late in the game against Baltimore.
Yeah, we'll see. I like that they have Myers back. I think that's a huge deal. All right, so our last game of the early slate, we have Washington at the Giants. So I don't like people were saying, "Oh, this is a shady line." It was 3.5 to open. Now it's gone up to 4. And people are like, "Why is this only 3.5 or 4?" I think the sportsbooks have not priced Washington correctly all year. Like they're huge underdogs Cincinnati, they're huge underdogs since Baltimore. They covered both games.
By the way, before you continue, if they're 4-point favorite on the road, and they played at home earlier in the year, you know, you're still saying even if you use a 2-point home field adjustment, you're making Washington an 8-point favorite at home over the Giants.
Yeah,
which seems a bit high when you look at it from that perspective. And I'll let you continue, but especially considering the series history between these two teams.
Well, the Steelers were 6 over the Giants Monday night. I think Washington's better than Pittsburgh. So
not defensively.
Yeah. Oh, defensively, they actually rank higher.
Well, it depends. I think the DVOA is I won't say contrived statistic, but it makes a lot of assumptions, which lowers the more assumptions you make in a formula, the less data points you have that go into that formula.
Yeah. I think they're close defensively, those teams, but offensively, there's no contest. I mean, you have Russell Wilson and
no, that's Harris. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, for this game, I like Washington here. The Giants are just such a miserable team. Ever since Andrew Thomas got hurt, they haven't been able to block, and now they're going against a team that's 7th in pressure rate. Just going to be a tough time for Daniel Jones once again. The Giants are awful at home. They've only scored 1 touchdown all year at home. And the only concern I have for Washington is how are they going to react off the Hail Mary victory. I looked it up. Now, there's a very small sample size, so can't really take much from it. There have been 5 Hail Mary victories since 2002. The teams coming off those Hail Mary victories were 2-3 against the spread in their next game. One of those teams was the Packers on Thursday night. They had a mini bye. So I don't know how much that affected it. So there could be a sort of a letdown spot here, but I still think Washington is much better than the Giants, and I expect them to cover the spread. So what do you think here?
I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants win this game. They've actually played better in recent weeks. You know, they put up a game effort at Pittsburgh. They were competitive in that game against Cincinnati, and what was the one in between the two of them that they played? Who was it? I think 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to remember who they played.
They got
that was the Pittsburgh game. That was I think the that was
by the Eagles. They got crushed by the Eagles.
Yeah, that's right. The 28-3 game that had 7 punts to start the game.
Yeah.
One of the things is, remember, they played back in week 2, and of course Washington was still, getting accustomed to the new coach and Daniels, the quarterback. They had 7 field goals in that game to put up 21 points, not 3 touchdowns. And the Giants, if you recall, were without a kicker. And they scored 3 touchdowns in the game for 18 points. They had to go for 2, and they didn't make any of them. So they can play with a little bit of confidence against Washington, knowing that they play them early. Now, clearly, Washington is a much better team, a more fully developed team than they were back then. But the Giants, and Jones didn't play terribly last week. He did throw that late interception against Pittsburgh. But I've seen some improvement, and the Giants have had Washington's number over the past number of years. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I want to say it's like 8-3-1 straight up, and did well as underdogs in a number of those games. Different team, of course, because Washington was dysfunctional with the prior ownership. But I think the Giants are playing well enough that Washington should not have been favored by, I'd say, more than 3. And the fact that it's gone up, and I understand it. I was on Washington last week, and I was very fortunate to get, in some ways, I was fortunate because of the way the game ended, but Washington was in control most of the game. But again, Chicago gets some different, and the Giants defense isn't quite as good, but they did force Washington into 4 field goals rather than converting any of them into touchdowns. And the Giants, despite all their flaws, I believe they have a nice lead in the league as far as sacks go. They are averaging 4.4 defensive sacks per game, and that could create some issues against Daniels. He's probably much healthier than he was last week, but that's still a concern that I would have. Washington can run the football. Giants have not been good against the run, but this is just a spot where when it looks too easy, it rarely is. And again, they're coming off of. It's not so much the maybe it's a little bit of a letdown, but I don't really place much into it. It's a divisional game.
Yeah, the Giants have won 25 of the last 36 meetings between these teams. So
yeah, I think it's still even. If you go back over, I think the last 6 or 7 years, I think it's more one-sided than that.
Yeah, so you're right about that. And I remember the week 2 meeting very clearly because I had that in the Super Contest. I had the Giants, and then of course they couldn't kick a field goal. It just felt like a very terrible beat, and it was the week after that Tennessee bad beat against the Bears. So I just felt like cursed to begin the season. But I'll say this though, that Giants team is markedly different than this one because they had Andrew Thomas. Without Thomas, they're a completely different offense. They can't block at all. And the issue really with that is that Jones doesn't have time in the backfield to go deep to neighbors anymore. That's just radically changed their passing game, just not having Thomas blocking. So yeah, I just think these teams are just in just completely different situations than they were in week 2. And like you said it too, like Washington wasn't Washington back then. Like the Jaden Daniels has gotten better each week, until he got hurt. And that could be consideration too. Maybe he's not 100% either. So that could be another reason to kind of back off Washington. But I am leaning toward them right now.
I will say that neither team has been especially effective at forcing turnovers defensively. Washington has been somewhat better at avoiding turning the ball over on offense.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see if that changes this game. It's pretty easy. I feel like it's easy to force turnovers against Daniel Jones. It's just a train wreck. So we get to
I almost think it's in Jones's contract.
I know.
As often as he's done it.
He's horrible. He's just absolutely awful. All right, Bears at the Cardinals. I got news that a syndicate hammered Arizona. I don't know if you noticed the Bears were favored, and then suddenly Arizona's favored. They bet Arizona pretty heavily, and I was trying to figure out like why.
I'm showing them now a 1.5 point favorite at some places. By the way,
Arizona.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they were dogs, and now they're favorites. So the syndicate hammered Arizona when they were 1 or 1.5 point underdogs. So now they're favored here. I was kind of wondering why, and then maybe it's the offensive line for the Bears. Tevin Jenkins was downgraded in practice. Braxton Jones, DNP twice this week. These are 2 of their 3 best offensive linemen. If they have cluster injuries here, that could really hurt them. Plus, they're coming off the Hail Mary loss, and you also have to look at that history. Teams coming off the Hail Mary losses, those 5 teams, they're 3-2 against the spread the following week. One of those teams had a bye, so I don't know if you exclude them, it's 2-2. So I don't think you can I don't think you can read into it very much. But I was higher on the Bears earlier in the week before I saw these offensive line injuries. I just thought that Arizona coming off an upset win. They tend to Kyler Murray as quarterback the Cardinals has had a terrible track record of covering after success, and so I think that I thought that maybe Arizona would be in a flat spot, but given the offensive line injuries for Chicago, I think I'm going to switch to Arizona. So who do you like in this game?
Well, remember I mentioned that after playing Arizona, teams are 7-0.
Yeah.
Teams after playing Miami are 1-5 for some reason. Okay. Again, a very small sample size, but especially the way that they won that game, it could very well be a little bit of a letdown. Not that I put all that much emphasis into it, because I still like to look at a lot of the fundamentals. I continue to like that Chicago continues to show improvement with Williams. I like the fact that they came back to at least take the lead and arguably should have won the game last week, which I'm glad they didn't, but I'm glad that the result turned out the way it did. As far as offense goes, Arizona has an edge on offense, but I think that edge on offense is offset or matched at least by Chicago's edge on defense. Both of these teams are are relatively close to 50-50, both, well, certainly on offense as far as run versus pass plays. A lot of the stats are similar. One difference, and again, I'll take a look at some of the issues that have improved, is Chicago and Williams has been more susceptible to being sacked than has Kyler Murray. At the same time, the Chicago defense has been more proficient at sacking the opposing quarterbacks than has Arizona. I do like Chicago in this situation simply because even with the offensive line issues, you do have a quarterback who can get out of trouble if he has to start moving before he would normally like to. So I'm not that concerned because the Arizona defense has not been very good. In fact, the raw numbers have them 27th overall against the in total yards, but it's unlike Baltimore, Arizona's defense is balanced. 26th against the run, 26th against the pass. So Chicago has multiple ways to attack the Arizona defense. They're actually not very good. They're about 28th, in the raw passing stats, 19th in running the football. So they're not great at either. But the defense, I think, makes up. They're 11th against the pass, 14th against the run. So if it comes down to which defense is going to make a stop in what could be a higher than expected scoring game, I'd prefer to have the Bears.
Yeah, it's a good point about Caleb Williams trying, kind of negating the pass rush, and Arizona
escapability.
Arizona suffered a setback with Dennis Gardeck being put on IR. He was a very talented pass rusher that they had. So he's not going to be available for this game. He didn't play last week either, so they could still win without him, but it is a blow to the defense. So we get to the next game here, Jaguars at the Eagles. Speaking of offensive line woes, both Ezra Cleveland and Brandon Sheriff were DNP twice in practice this week, so the Jaguars could also have cluster injuries on the offensive line. I think that the Eagles are the play here. The Jaguars lost Christian Kirk. They may not have Gabe Davis. They may not have Brian Thomas Jr., although he was limited in practice twice. My only worry with the Eagles is that they have to play Dallas next week. They're a big favorite, so they could be looking ahead. But I still like them here. I early in the week I thought Jacksonville, but seeing these offensive line injuries, and also I say cluster injuries. It's like cluster absences because Cam Robinson was traded, so they're really down 3 offensive linemen that those 2 guys don't play. So it's a very, very bad situation for the Jaguars. Maybe they get there in the back of their cover if the Eagles start looking ahead, but I do like the Eagles here. What are your thoughts here?
Well, I do like the way that Jacksonville has been playing a little bit more of lately. It was a late loss at Green Bay where they came back to a tie, and Green Bay gets the field goal. Of course, they had that impressive win against New England, but, so what? They had that lopsided loss to Chicago, but, remember, they started the season losing a couple of close games. They could have beaten Miami. They could have beaten Cleveland. They got hammered by Buffalo. Then a 4-point loss to Houston, a 3-point win over Indy, one-sided loss to Chicago, and then the win over New England, a close loss. So this is a team that has shown an ability to come back, and you may be right. Even shorthanded, Philadelphia could get a nice little lead. They could be up by 10, 13 points, and Jacksonville may still be able to go down the field. I've gone back and forth on this game because I don't know. Can I trust the Eagles to have a second game in a row after really playing a great second half? The game was 17-17 against Cincinnati last week, and Philadelphia just took charge. I had Cincinnati. I had Philadelphia money line last week in addition to the plus points. I'm seeing this line now at the 7 and 7.5. So if you like Jacksonville, you can get the hook. If you like Philadelphia, you can lay the 7. I think in the newsletter this week, I think I end up with a lean on Jacksonville at plus 7.5. But as a lean, And given the injuries that we've learned about during the week, it's probably a pass for me.
Okay. Yeah, I might end up on the Eagles as a bet, but I'm not sure. I just really want to see how these offensive line injuries shake out for the Jaguars.
And again, I'm not concerned about the look ahead because, again, almost like with Cincinnati, I don't think Philadelphia expected to be 5-2 and half a game behind Washington for the division lead. If they were going to be behind anybody, they figured to be behind Dallas. And Philadelphia still has to meet Washington twice. So I think they cannot afford to overlook an opponent that they should easily beat. But covering is a different issue. But I don't think they would be looking ahead to Dallas at this point.
Okay. All right. Next game, Rams at the Seahawks. So there are receiver injuries here for the Seahawks. DK Metcalf has not practiced yet, but I think they originally said that he was going to try out how he felt on Friday. So I think this was by design already. So we'll see what happens on Friday. So Puka Nacua left practice today with the knee injury. So he just can't catch a break, unfortunately. And I was bullish on the Rams, when they had their two receivers back. Just felt like Stafford was finally unlocked, and now Nacua leaves with an injury. I don't know if he's going to play. They wrote him down as limited in practice today, so Friday is going to be huge here. The Rams have dominated this rivalry. You talk about how Washington dominated New York. The Rams have dominated the Seahawks recently. Now, granted, that was an old head coaching position for Seattle. Pete Carroll was there, so maybe it's going to be new dynamic with Mike McDonald. But I would like the Rams here if Nacua is going to play. If Nacua is out, I would lose interest here. So, what are your thoughts on this game?
Well, neither of these teams can run the football, but the Rams have been a little bit better at it. Neither of them is very good at stopping the run, although the Rams have been a little bit better at that as well. Obviously not having both receivers does hurt the Rams, but Seattle had long been known for having that great home field advantage for many, many years. Again, a lot of it was under Pete Carroll. They're 1-3 straight up this year at home, and the one win was in week 3, 24-3. I think the final was against, I was going to say toothless, but it's Tua-less Miami. Yeah. They then lost to the Giants. They lost to San Francisco, and they lost to Buffalo. So they've lost 3 straight home games, surrounded around that surprisingly easy win at Atlanta. So I can certainly see the Rams being in a position to take advantage, especially if both receivers are healthy. At the same time, let's also recognize the fact that Seattle has a bye next week before a pair of divisional games, including the first one being a revenge match at San Francisco, and then playing at home against Arizona. But again, I don't know that necessarily you're preparing ahead when you're playing a divisional game. So I think that Seattle is going to be well prepared for the Rams. Yeah, I also want to take a look at the injury report because I like the Rams. I certainly like the Rams with both receivers in there.
Yeah, just a completely different team.
I don't know that I would play Seattle if Nacua is out, but I might think twice about playing the Rams. But if I had to play with the Nacua out, I would still play the Rams.
I bet the Rams to win the division at 4-1 before the season, and so I was very excited when they both came back last week and won. Mm-hmm. And of course, now Nacua gets hurt again.
And by the way, the Rams do have the extra rest after playing on Thursday night. Yep. And I mentioned earlier in the show that I was going to get to that game with the playoff implications. Rams were 3-6 last year, and they ran off 7 wins in the final 8 games to make the playoffs. So this team, a couple other things there in a moment, but this team realizes that, yeah, they're 3-4 right now, but look at what they did last year when they were 3-6. Not only that, the Rams at 3-4 with a win here. Okay, they would be 4-4. Seattle would be 4-5. San Francisco is 4-4 with a bye, even though San Francisco beat Seattle. They play again after Seattle's bye. And Arizona right now is 4-4. If they lose at home to Chicago, all of a sudden Seattle is right up there in the NL West, despite starting right now at their record of 4-4. I'm sorry, Rams 3-4.
Yeah, division's wide open. Anyone can win it right now. And the Niners are still the favorites, but they have injuries, so we'll see. Last of the late.
And by the way, they weren't playing, with the exception of McCaffrey. Even when they were relatively healthy, they were not playing as well as we would have expected. Considering all the skill talent that they have and the offensive defensive lines.
Yeah, the big difference for the 49ers has been the red zone offense, and that's really where they missed Christian
McCaffrey.
Christian McCaffrey this year. The 49ers in red zone offense last year were first. This year without McCaffrey, they are 27th. So it's been a big drop off, but he's expected back week 10. We'll see how healthy he is. We just don't know at this point. I have not drafted.
Oh, but remember, San Francisco also will be coming off their bye.
Yep. Yeah. We'll
of this week.
Right. We'll see how healthy he is. But yeah, I'm kind of very curious to see it. I have not drafted him in any best ball leagues. I feel like it might really hurt me, or it could pay off just fading him. But I don't know. The Achilles injury kind of scares me a little bit with him. I don't know if we're going to.
Now, is that a league that you drafted at the start of the season?
Well, yes.
Or do you do it each week?
Yeah, I do it each week. So like right now I was drafting, it's week 9 onward. So it's really only 6 weeks of the regular season. So any players had a bye already that just gives them a huge boost because you get them for 6 games instead of 5.
Right.
So yeah, all the week 5, 6, and 7 teams that buys them those weeks, they're just premium players. And outside of those guys, and players are going to be out. Like for example, Nico Collins. Like people are drafting him. I'm like, well, he still didn't have his bye, and he's out this week. So you're only going to have him for 4 games instead of 6. It's just,
and Stroud has not been as consistent as he was last year.
Yeah, although getting Collins back will certainly help.
Yeah.
He's missed him a lot. So Stroud looked very poor tonight, but it was a tough matchup with.
I think that's the second poor game in 3 weeks. Didn't he struggle a few weeks ago? Who was it they played before Green Bay? I forget who it was, but I think he had a tough game.
Well, yeah, he struggled against Green Bay, and then last week against the Colts, he won.
Colts. Okay, so it was Green Bay 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and they covered the spread in that game somehow. I don't know. Jordan Love throwing that game away early on. Speaking of Jordan Love, the Packers host the Lions. This line has dropped to 2.5. I guess because of good news on Jordan Love, which I don't quite deem good news. He was upgraded DMP to limited with his groin injury. Although no Jair Alexander in practice thus far.
Considering how well Detroit is playing, I'm surprised that any news would drop that line.
Yeah, I guess they, with Jordan Love playing, I suppose they wanted to make it 2.5. If I thought when they set this line at 3.5.
Yeah, I don't know if that was money that moved that line down or the report on Jordan Love.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either.
Because I have to believe, as much as people like Green Bay, who's playing better than Detroit right now on both sides of the ball, especially on offense.
Yeah, it's a great point. But Green Bay is a great team as well. I love the Packers. I have them in my top 5 in my power rankings. I think EPA has them number 5, I believe, or it's number 6. I can't remember. But so I thought when they made this line, I thought 3.5 was neutral. Whereas if Love was going to play, they'd drop it to 2.5. If Love was going to be out, they'd move it to like 4.5. That's why I took from it, but I could be wrong.
I would agree with that pretty much exactly.
Okay. So
Detroit should be favored, but Love's uncertain status would decide what half point on which side of 3.
Yeah, exactly. So my thought here is that if Jordan Love's going to play, I'm going to be on the Lions because he's going to try to play at. We saw this already when he returned early against the Vikings, and then the next game. Against the Rams, like he just didn't play at 100%. I know they covered against the Rams, so he didn't have good games. He already has shown a history of returning early and being ineffective. If he comes back and he can't move around because of the groin injury, like that could really hurt them here. Whereas I thought if Malik Willis plays and this line is 4.5, I would like the Packers because we've seen Malik Willis play very well. The Lions lost Aiden Hutchinson. I don't think they've been tested without Hutchinson yet. Like last week against Tennessee, like they weren't tested. Like Tennessee is garbage. The week before that, they played the Vikings. The Vikings scored 29 on them. Like I think that without Hutchinson, the defense is going to be much worse. And the Packers with Malik Willis said they should be able to run with Willis. He's shown an ability to throw the ball against Tennessee. He had a good passing game. And Detroit's secondary is just not very good. They allow a lot of production to the slot. So that's what Jaden Reed plays, and he's getting healthier. And I think that backing backup quarterbacks against non-elite defenses is a good strategy. The team's going to play a lot harder. They're going to rally around Malik Willis, and I feel like they're going to play very hard, maybe even harder than the Lions, because the Lions might take that for granted with Malik Willis starting. But if it's Jordan Love, then I suddenly have interest in the Lions because I don't trust Love to be healthy. So this game right now is in flux, where I thought at the beginning of the week that Willis is going to play and I'd be on the Packers, but at -2.5 with Love in, I would be on Detroit. So where do you stand on this game?
Well, I've also taken a look. I mean, both of these teams I have rated very, very highly in virtually every category that I consider significant. When I look at my preference overall is for Green Bay. A couple of reasons, aside from the fact that I like Green Bay, and I understand the concerns about Love. I will note that when Malik Willis played, I think starting in that week 2, because Love was injured at the end of the game against Philly in Brazil in week 1. The Packers ran the ball 53 times for 261 yards. Now, yes, that was against Indianapolis, and Indianapolis, does not have a great defense against the run. But again, their averages included that 261 yards that Green Bay put on them. So, that still affects the numbers. But almost as important, if not maybe more so, is Green Bay. This is for first place effectively in the North. Detroit 6-1. A loss would put them at 6-2. A win would put Green Bay at 7-2. Green Bay, one of their 2 losses was at home in division to Minnesota, which makes this an even more important game to win, because a loss here would have them 2 division losses, and they still have to play at Minnesota and at Detroit, in addition to 2 games against Chicago. The other loss they had was that Philadelphia game to open the season. They've won 4 in a row. They've beaten teams, obviously not clearly as good as Detroit, because Detroit might be, you want to put them somewhere in the top 4 or 5 teams, well, maybe let's say even the top 3 teams. I agree with you. You might not put Green Bay right up there, but I would say they're no lower than 5 in the overall scheme of rankings. I like getting 3.5 in this game. I would play them +3. I would not play them at +2.5. But I will be playing them on the money line, because I believe this game is important. And, taking a look again at the schedule, again, depending upon how much importance you put on it, Green Bay does have a bye next week, and then they've got 2 very difficult games coming up. That first game against Chicago, which is on the road, and then they host San Francisco. So a win here would put them in good position should they lose. Let's say if Detroit goes 2-1 in those 3, if Green Bay goes 2-1, Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, they're in a lot better shape if one of those 2 wins is against Detroit, rather than both of them being against Chicago and San Francisco and losing to Detroit.
Right, exactly. So Kim McGee brings up a good point. Goff will be outdoors first time this season.
Yeah, this season,
50-degree
and
weather.
by the way, I think they are expecting rain. And by the way, both of these teams, interestingly, average 157 yards per game. And I would think if the weather is rainy or something, especially going off the artificial turf, that the Green Bay runners may have an advantage over the Detroit running game.
Yeah, I think so too. So that'll be a factor. Goff historically has not played well in the elements. And then also a good point here. What are the chances of injuring the groin more if it's a wet field for Jordan Love?
Yeah.
So I think that should be in consideration. Hopefully they start Willis, and we could bet the Packers at a good line.
The one advantage, and you probably know this because of what you mentioned about Love, Detroit does have a significant. It's interesting, in fact, they have a significant advantage in turnovers. They've only committed 5 turnovers. They've only lost 5 turnovers this year. Green Bay has lost 12.
Yeah.
And defensively, Green Bay a little bit better. They've forced 24. Detroit has forced 15. But again, Detroit has played 1 less game.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the turnovers is on Jordan Love. Like he's very aggressive. He takes chances, and sometimes it backfires. If Malik Willis plays, I don't think they're going to turn the ball over nearly as much.
Yeah, because hopefully for them, they're not going to be forced into passing the ball that often because the running game is effective. Both teams are above average in stopping the run. By the way, as far as those turnovers, I like to rank things not on pure turnovers or turnover margins. I like to rank as far as turnovers lost per game and turnovers recovered per game. These teams rank 1 and 2 defensively as far as forcing turnovers.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be.
Which, by the way, could lean to an under. The thing about turnovers, and it's interesting, depends on where the turnovers occur. If you turn the ball over in your own zone, that leads to more scoring. If you turn the ball over after you've marched to the opponent's 25-yard line and taken 4 minutes to do it, that tends to deflate scoring because you've just given up an opportunity when you turn it over on the opponent's 25.
Yeah. Mike says, I can't believe Walt is hoping for Malik Willis. I like the backup quarterbacks if they're not playing against the lead defenses. So that's
well, the thing that's interesting is they must have known something when they traded for him right before the season started with Tennessee.
Yeah. And people questioned it too. And, he was regarded as a first-round prospect by some. And now, obviously, he went to the third round, but there were
he was a first-round prospect turned into a first-round project, and maybe he needed someone like LaFleur to turn him into a competent quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
Still not enough large enough of a sample, but at least it's a lot better than the initial doomsayers were projecting.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Let's get to the Sunday night game. Speaking of quarterbacks who are projects, Anthony Richardson benched, which I feel like a great thing for this matchup. I was looking at how Anthony Richardson does against the blitz because the Vikings blitz more than any other team in the NFL. Anthony Richardson, when blitzed this year, has completed 29% of his passes, 6.8% turnover rate, which is extremely high. By comparison, Joe Flacco against the blitz, 51% completions, and his turnover rate is like 2% or something. So he's a far better option for this game and far better option overall. Anthony Richardson has been just a complete disaster. He checked himself out of the game for fatigue, which I have never seen from a quarterback. I mean, you've been watching football longer than I have. Have you ever seen that, Andy? Like a quarterback checking himself out for
I don't know that it's ever occurred and been admitted to.
Yeah, that's so bizarre.
It may have occurred, but I don't think it was ever admitted to or publicly stated.
Right. I think he lost the locker room. So I like this for the Colts. It's a Colts team that fights hard. They haven't lost by more than 6 points all year. And I think they're going to play a close game here, especially with Flacco. Minnesota is not going to be the same without Christian Darrisaw. Now I know they traded for Cam Robinson, but he's a good player, but he's not the top left tackle in the NFL or top 2 left tackle in the NFL like Christian Darrisaw is. So it's still going to be a downgrade. Indianapolis has gotten healthier. They've gotten DeForest Buckner back. Jonathan Taylor's back as well. They might be missing Bernard Raymond, one of their tackles this week. He hasn't practiced yet, but he really struggled last week. So I think he was playing injured. So it might actually be a good thing that he's not going to play. For the Vikings, Blake Cashman, talented linebacker, he's missed practice twice as well. So that is another downgrade against a Colts team that's going to try to run the ball at them, and I think they're going to have some success. So I like Indianapolis here to cover and maybe even win outright. Who do you like here?
I like Minnesota returning home. They started 5-0. Yeah, that's nice. They did have that road win at Green Bay. They had the blasting of Houston. They beat San Francisco at home as 4-point underdogs. Their other wins in that stretch were the win in London against the Jets and the win on the road to open the season against the Giants. They had their bye, and then they played that physical game against Detroit, losing 31-29 on a late field goal. Then 4 days later, on a short week, they played at the Rams, and I don't know that they were prepared for both Kupp and Nakua to be playing in that game, as both were questionable. Kupp was certainly more likely, I think, to play before that game, and I think Nakua was a little bit more of a surprise. And when you had only 4 days to prepare, that might explain why they had some difficulties in that contest. Minnesota still has a very solid defense, and yes, I know Flacco is a little bit better at he's better at everything than Richardson. Let's face it, with the experience and everything. But Minnesota still averages 3.5 sacks per game against the the opposition. So that could create some issues for Flacco, who's of course, who is as young as they used to be, but it's you're starting approaching your late 30s and into the 40s. It becomes a little bit more of an issue. So there will be some pressure on the Indianapolis offensive line. I was going to mention it, but you mentioned it first, and that is yes, Indianapolis has every game, wins and losses. They're 4-4. Has been decided by 6 points or less. They are 7-1 against the spread, including covers in their last 6 games straight, including the loss to Jacksonville and the loss last week to Houston. So, getting anything more than 4 points, let's say, you would have to think fits right into Indianapolis's wheelhouse. So maybe I'm a little surprised that this remarkable success in playing close games that Indianapolis has. Maybe if Indianapolis had a few games in there that were 10-point margins, win or lose, or especially losses, maybe had a 12-point loss, maybe this game is closer to 7. I think Minnesota, with their defense overall and the fact that they are coming off of those 2 tough games, the tough game against Detroit because Detroit is such a good team, and the tough game against the Rams because A, it was on a short week, B, was on the road, and C, they had to face 2 receivers who they may not have been fully prepared to face both of them, which of course makes the Rams a much better team when they're both in there. I think we see a good effort Sunday night, in front of the national audience and in front of a rabid home crowd. I've been on Indianapolis a number of times this year. I was on them last week against Houston. I was on them the week before against Miami in that ugly 16-10 game. This week I'm going against them, and I might be playing it in the contest. I know I will be playing it out of pocket.
I do wonder what this record would be if Flacco had started every game. I think some of those close games would maybe be wins. Maybe they'd be 5-3 or 6-2.
Well, keep in mind, by the way, last year without Flacco and with Richardson missing much of the season, they were a 9-8 team. They barely missed the playoffs last year in Steichen's first year. I have a lot of regard for the coach, but I think it's not necessarily a tough situation for the Colts as it is an important situation for Minnesota. Again, considering that in that NFC North, their great record as a whole for the NFC North in non-conference games. Indianapolis does have a home game next week against Buffalo, which will be an important game for them. I don't think it's a look ahead, but it is a schedule spot for them. This is a second straight road game, and it's never an easy spot. But I think this is more in fact, it's almost all a play on Minnesota than it is against Indianapolis, because there's very little negative I can say against Indianapolis. And why would you say anything negative? They've covered 7 out of 8, and every game's been close.
Yeah. Quacky bringing up here the drama at quarterback. I actually think that it's a positive for Indianapolis. Anytime you have a coaching change or quarterbacking change, I think that sparks the team. We saw the Panthers in week 3 when they moved from Bryce Young to Andy Dalton. That ignited them. And generally, when this happens, the players tend to fight hard because they don't want the finger pointed at them. It's like, hey, it was that guy, it was not my fault. What
was the locker room? Have you had any insight into how the locker room feels about Richardson?
Well, I think he lost the locker room when he checked himself out of the game
with the fatigue.
Yeah. It was Ryan Kelly had a press conference and he criticized him. The starting center criticized the quarterback. So.
Yeah.
I think he.
I know really Flacco has been supportive.
Yes,
of course. Why wouldn't he be? He's getting the starting job. But I mean, as far as being a mentor and saying, "Hey, you got a nice career ahead of you. These things happen. I struggled early on as well." Blah blah blah.
Yeah, and I think they are going to have more confidence with Flacco, especially after last week. Like, I think they're going to know that this guy has won a Super Bowl before. He led a team to the playoffs last year. I think they think that they'd have a better chance with Flacco. So
can he handle the Minnesota blitz? Remember, Richardson, a little bit more mobile, had a better chance of escaping it. That may very well be the key to this game. Both teams are basically average as far as turnovers lost per game. Minnesota a little bit better at forcing them, but offensively they're both pretty much middle of the pack. So I would expect that If Flacco does not turn the ball over, maybe Indiana does have an opportunity, but I wouldn't be surprised. Flores, with his disguises and his tendency to blitz, might pick the right time, the right down and distance situation to do so.
Yeah, I do trust Shane Steichen to counter that. It's a good offensive minded guy. And like I said, Flacco, his number is way better against the blitz than Richardson's. Richardson was abysmal against the blitz, so I do like this. If they had stuck with Richardson, I would be on Minnesota.
But we'd also be laying probably 7.5 if that were the case.
That's definitely true. So,
although you know what, maybe 7, because again, regardless of who's at quarterback, they've still only played games decided by 6 or less.
Yeah, it's true. I just feel like Richardson would just be such a disaster in that situation. People criticizing my hat. I think this hat's fire. I don't know you guys.
I love the hat.
See, there we go. All right. Last game, we have the Buccaneers at the Chiefs. This line is about 9. So we only have 1 day's worth of injury news here, so I'm not going to really read into much. Like I saw Levante David was out, but that could just be veteran rest. So we'll see what happens to the injuries. But right now, I'm leaning toward the Buccaneers just because the Chiefs, they rarely win by margin. I know they did in the spot against the Saints on Monday Night Football, but that was a 13-point game, and if Derek Carr didn't get hurt, they could have had a backdoor touchdown to get it to 6.
They got backdoored last week by the Raiders.
Yeah, they got backdoored by the Raiders. Yeah, exactly. So that could happen once again. Now, if Mayfield had one of his receivers, now the line would be a little bit less, but still, I would have more faith in that. Instead, he's throwing in addition to Kate Otten, he's throwing to bums like Jalen McMillan and Sterling Shepard and Trey Palmer. These guys are terrible. Raheem Jarrett, these guys are horrible. The Chiefs have the number 1 defense in the NFL. So it's going to be tough for Tampa. They're going to need some luck. So I'm not going to bet them. I would back them in an office pool, though. I think this line's a little high, considering that the Chiefs just rarely try their hardest in this sort of spot. They tend to experiment a lot. They do weird passes to offensive linemen. You're going to see Mahomes do a left-handed passes or underhanded passes or something. This is what they do. They play. They're like a cat playing with their food in the regular season. They're going to turn it on in the playoffs, but right now I don't think we're going to get their best effort. So that's why I would be on Tampa. But given the injuries, not just at receiver, at cornerback, they're missing their top 2 cornerbacks last week. I can't really bet Tampa. So where do you stand on this game?
I think this is one of those games where you could consider maybe teasing it down to 3, 2.5, or 2, depending if you want to go 6, 6.5, or 7 with the line currently at 9. Although I do see a couple of places where it's 8.5, so you could just use a 6-pointer to get it under 3. And the thing that makes that kind of interesting is that if you have any other open teasers from Sunday that you've tied into Kansas City, you can always get a nice little middle hedge created by taking Tampa Bay plus the points. And let's say the line goes up to 10. Let's say you've done a 6.5-point teaser, or let's say you've done the 6-point teaser if you can get a place that has it at 8. So you're laying 2.5 for the teaser. You might get 10 with Tampa Bay and create an opportunity to cash both tickets.
Yeah, I love doing the middle. I always say if you do a teaser, make sure the games don't start at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah, so yeah, I love that. I'm surprised they dropped it to 8.5 because that opens up the teaser possibilities, you said.
I saw that. I think Treasure Island, which is an independent book out here, but I also see that number at the Pinnacle offshore right now, and Heritage DraftKings has it at 8.5 as well.
Yeah, Slew bringing up the Chiefs have Denver next week, so that's another reason why they won't play very hard. So yeah, this is a non-conference game in between 2 divisional games. Granted, one was against the Raiders, but I do think they could be
the old sandwich game.
Yeah, exactly. So I outside of teasing this game, I'm not going to bet it. So it's kind of disappointing that we.
I almost thought that you might be considering the state of Tampa Bay's defense, but the fact that they also have a decent offense, maybe you look over the total in this one.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I could see if there's going to be a backdoor that lends itself to the over. So I agree with that. Okay, yeah, we ran through all the games. Do you have anything else to add? If not, do you want to talk about thelogicalapproach.com?
Yeah, by the way, I'm seeing the total in this game it's gone up a little bit from the open, but it's still, at some places, 45.5 is still a decent number, especially if you think Tampa Bay has the possibility. And I know Spagnuolo is so good. He's been there. And, I'm going to say he's the reason they won the Super Bowl last year. Because, well, look, it's a 3-point win overtime as well. And, the Kansas City is accustomed to scoring more points, but not last year. Yeah, no, I have the weekly stats up there as far as the comparison. With some, sort of unique stats, different types of power ratings, line power, something along those lines, where I take into account perception and reality, as far as what is the, what's the point spread, and I make a power rating using the point spread and the actual result of the game. Call it perspective versus reality, or perception versus reality, and that's a little unique thing in my Factor X, which I think I've explained before, and I think there's a little explanation in the in the notes below the stats there. So that's thelogicalapproach.com. You go to current stats, and down there it shows college and pro football stats. You click on that, because actually it's one spreadsheet that has the NFL on top, and then it has all the college games below with all the same stats, all the same categories.
Yeah, and guys, make sure you sign up for the newsletter here. Andy gives some amazing insight on these newsletters, and he has picks posted there as well. Like I said, his top pick is one of the 5 college football picks we have on the site as well. So we're in a consensus for that one. You can see where it is, or what it is, if you sign up for the newsletter at thelogicalapproach.com.
Yeah. By the way, wait until sometime tomorrow, because with the end of the month, I do lower the prices for the subscriptions. So
okay.
Yeah, wait till I'd say midday tomorrow.
Okay.
If you want to take a look at it. And by the way, I do have a sample copy from last year that gives you the format of the newsletter. The introductory article changes every week. This week, for example, I think, last week, the last 2 weeks, as you know, Walt, we've done talking about home field. We did home underdogs 2 weeks ago and home field advantage last week. And this week, it's a combination college and pro, looking at stats that relate to covering point spreads, winning games, as far as, for example, teams that have a better than 2-to-1 rushing edge in a game, what their record is against the spread. And I go back, I take a look at for the first, I think it's 107 games played this year, but I also show it the historical averages, which date back to 1988. So you got 30-something years, and you'll see there's a lot of relative closeness between what we're seeing this year and what we've seen historically. Some are slightly better, some are slightly worse, but it's something up there. Now that's in this week's issue, and I may end up posting that at some point.
Yeah, the link to this is in the description, so guys, check it out for sure. Slew with the 321 super chat. Thank you so much, Slew. Really appreciate it. He says next week is mental illness week after DJT wins. Yeah, we'll be having a live election night show on Tuesday. So guys, we're gonna do that before the pick show on Tuesday. So guys, check that out as well. We had a comment here. Mike says,
what's the show? What's the show going to be on? Is it you're going to do an election show?
Yeah, we're gonna have some people on for the election. Are gonna look at the live betting for the
betting
election.
Odds.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna have some fun.
What are the latest odds?
It's a good question. I'm gonna pull them up right now. I trust Bookmaker. It's the site I use. Actually, you could use it as well because it's offshore.
Yeah.
So let's see. Politics. Where are you? I hope they didn't take it off. Here it is. They moved it up on the menu. So right now, Donald Trump is a minus 172 favorite. Kamala Harris is plus 148. And you could bet any other candidate at plus 102,000.
Yeah.
So I will not do that.
Now, by the way, now that's I guess based on I'm guessing obviously electoral vote.
Yeah,
the results
it's the winning. It's the winning.
And by the way, because of all the craziness that's been going on, I wonder if they are going to wait to declare the winner until January 6th, when the results have to be certified by the House of Representatives, and we know what happened last time. It was a mess, and we could see something like that this time. So you may have a winning ticket. Now, by the way, from tax purposes, if you don't cash it until 2025, that saves you a year of having taxes on your winnings there. But you may want to see exactly what the odds are. They may just go ahead and say once a winner is declared or something, they may just pay off, and regardless of if there's any change.
The neat thing about online sports books is that you don't have to pay taxes on your winnings until you withdraw it from your account.
Okay, that's
so
good.
Yeah, so you can wait. You can wait till January as well. In that case.
By the way, I'd like to see. I think it's a close race. They say within a point or two, but I would like to see an index bet, as like they do in the Super Bowl for points scored.
Yeah.
The popular vote, Harris by 1 to 2 million, Trump by 1 to 2 million, Harris by 2 million to 4 million, etc. And you can actually make a wager on who will win the popular vote and by what margin. And that's especially true if the overall results are as close as the polls suggest. I mean, Harris wins largely because of the state of California and all the votes that they have. And in fact, if I were making a line on this, or being a book and offering a line, I would almost eliminate California because it's expected to be so one-sided Democrat. With 50, I don't forget what the number of people are. 35 million or whatever going to vote there, and just have the other 49 states, which I think would be a much more competitive race if you eliminated California.
Yeah, on Bookmaker, you can also bet the margin of the Electoral College. So, for example, GOP by 1 to 4 is 37 to 1. GOP by 5 to 14 is 30 to 1, and so on and so forth. And
by the way, if you're considering a bet like that, check in. I know CNN does it. I think Fox and MSNBC might also. They use those maps to show you the way that each candidate needs to win which states, what combinations they are. So you can end up actually doing something similar to that to say, okay, if Trump wins, here's likely the states that he will carry. And let's say Harris wins the other ones. And so you might have an idea of, is 1 to 4 a reasonable margin to expect with 37 to 1 payoff, or might it be Harris by 10 to 13 or whatever? So there are basically of I think the 50 states, I think probably about 43 or 44 of them are pretty much known which way they are almost certain to go. It's the 7 swing states that you want to analyze in coming up with your possible combinations. And we'll get some idea over the weekend. They'll probably take their final poll on Saturday or Sunday. So those margin bets might offer some value, but keep in mind that because I'm talking about it this way as well, the bookmakers have probably already factored that in, or maybe factoring that in.
Yeah. Sue says Robert Barnes here, Trump 75 million, Harris 72, other 2 million. So Kenny, who's our Wednesday co-host, thinks that Trump will win the popular vote. So we'll see. I think it'll be close. So it'll be closer than last time, I think. So we'll definitely see about that. Mike says Walt's flying on a sugar high at 2 a.m. Here's my Swedish fish and my Snickers that I took from my son's bag. He's not going to eat all of it. So
under half the bag, half of his stash.
I think it's half under. I think it's mostly gone already. So
I was going to say, let's check that tomorrow at this time.
Oh, it'll be gone tomorrow. So my daughter got a bunch of candy. She's 1. She can't eat it. So it has to go somewhere. And I don't want my son eating all.
Oh, the sacrifices you make.
It's I know. It's a horrible thing. Yeah. We had Pennsylvania will decide the election. I will say this. This is.
How about specifically Walt's vote?
Right. Yeah. They did a movie about that. The guy who had the last vote to decide the presidency. I can't remember what it's called, but no. This is completely anecdotal. I've been counting Harris and Trump signs when I've been driving around. Either picking my son up from daycare or going to the gym or whatever.
What county? What county are you in? Chester?
Bucks.
Bucks.
County.
Okay.
Bucks
I think isn't Bucks Republican? mostly?
It depends where you go, which neighborhood you go in. So
Yeah.
I
No,
be
I'm talking like as far as votes in recent elections,
I think
because
Bucks
that
went
that
Democrat
would give
in
you a hint as
2020.
okay. Well, then based on that, depending upon what parts of the county, then you would expect to see more Harris signs than Trump signs. So if you see more Trump signs than Harris signs in what has been, assuming you're true, and then we went Democratic the last election, that
Yeah,
might lean towards Trump being the favorite there.
yeah, it went 51% Biden. Bucks County went in 2020. So
Yeah.
and any so this like I said anecdotal, but any house that had like 4 signs for Trump or Harris, I just counted that as one. So within the past like 4 or 5 days, I've been driving around. I've seen 23 Harris signs. I've seen 75 Trump signs. So it's a lot of Trump signs
And
out
now
here.
now is that okay? But you were counting even yards with one sign. You're just saying that if
Right.
someone had 4 signs, 3 signs, 2 signs, or one sign, it all counted as one. So you were basically
Yeah.
counting the number of houses or the number of properties that had at
Yeah.
least one sign.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's like my dad has
Yeah.
he has like 4 signs on his lawn. Like he's like, oh, I just got a new one each time. It's like, okay, I'm gonna count this as one. But yeah. So yeah, I because I noticed there's like so many Trump signs. I'm like, yeah, let me just count like what I'm still gonna do on the road. So I thought that was interesting
Now,
because
have you driven towards different parts of Bucks
yeah.
County?
Oh
Okay,
yeah,
so
because my
it's
son.
representative of not just like one neighborhood.
Yeah. Like my wife works in Newtown. My son goes to daycare in Jenkintown. I'm around Feasterville. Yeah, I've been
Jenkintown,
driving all over.
Cheltenham High School.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's pretty close.
you know
So
who went to Cheltenham High School?
who?
Reggie Jackson.
Really? Okay, I
Oh,
didn't know
by the
that.
way, so
I
did
didn't know
so
that.
did Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, but Reggie
Wow.
Jackson is the one that most people know about
Well,
from
I've always said
years ago.
my the most famous alumnus who went to my high school was Bill Cosby,
Oh,
which people
do you say it a
people
lot more softly these days?
yeah, because I told the story before on the show, but when I was a freshman in high school, Bill Cosby came in to speak, and he did an assembly only for the seniors. Like I said, I was only a
Oh,
freshman, so I was very jealous of them.
oh.
And now, of course, he's
Was
not
that? By
around.
the way, was that for career day or
No, I
just?
don't know. He just did stand up for
Oh,
the assembly. I don't know why. But he no. Now it's funny. Now people say, "Oh, Bill Cosby dropped out," where they never said that before. So it's pretty
that's
funny.
all right. He was the commencement speaker at my school, at my college, Penn, back I want to say in the 1990s maybe,
Mm,
and he was given an honorary degree, which once all the sexual issues cropped up and everything, they withdrew the honorary degree. Yet he's still
wow.
listed as a recipient, even though it's been withdrawn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I told the story before. I know a guy. He used to work in just he was in a moving company, and he's a rather large guy, like very large. And
Fat
um,
Albert.
well, it's funny you should say that because he was moving furniture in a very like rich neighborhood one day, and he's moving like a table, and he hears hey, and he like looks around, he's like, and he hears it again, he's like hey, and he
Bill
like looks.
Cosby.
It was Bill Cosby just staring out his window and doing the Fat Albert noise. It's like what else? He was just not doing anything else on a Saturday afternoon. He was just staring out his window, looking at that fat guy.
He was probably trying to watch from his alma mater, but who could watch Temple football for too long?
Yeah, that's it's quite the punishment. Last comment here: Hubbard plus Ingram plus Judy for Metcalf plus Primuth. He just lost Ayuk and Diggs for the year. Yeah, I think I'd do that. Metcalf should be back soon, so I do like that. I do love Njoku. So yeah, you don't really need Ingram. That makes sense. Yeah, I would do the straight Jay Garcia. So thanks. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Really appreciate it. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store and check out thelogicalapproach.com. Like I said, link in the description as well. We're gonna be back on Saturday. I don't know who the guest will be on Saturday because Tom has the week off, so I have to find someone, I think. So we'll see. But Andy, thanks for joining me once again. I love doing the show with you. talking about these picks is just one of the highlights of the week. So
one of these Thursdays, we will keep it to under 2 hours.
well, we're an hour 48 right now, so we're there. So
okay, then we got 12 minutes to fill.
Yeah, exactly. All right, all right, all right, guys. Have a good night and a great start to your weekend. And if I don't talk to you Saturday, good luck with your bets. But hopefully you'll come back on Saturday, and I'll talk to you then.
Yeah, good luck, everybody.
All right, bye.